allowing us to explore a very important point of view regarding the current situation. Maybe Michal would like to take it from here to elaborate a little bit.
Michal.
Sí, acá estoy.
Vale.
Bueno, uno quería agradecer a Hillel por venir y un poco presentarlo. Y también desde empezar a decir que el internet hoy no nos acompaña, así que si me congelo algo, nos suplementamos, ¿no? Entre todos. Eh, bueno, Hillel es profesor en la Universidad de Jerusalén, Hebrea de Jerusalén, en el Departamento de Estudios Islámicos y Oriente Medio, y autor de libros ligados a las relaciones entre judíos y árabes, entre ellos 1929, Año Cero del conflicto judío-árabe, Árabes Buenos y otros más. Que siempre creo que como lo que tiene muy especial es el tema de tener como, un poco, como dijo él, dos narrativas o poder realmente mirar distintas narrativas con compasión. No estoy congelada, ¿no? Porque veo que me están mirando. Eh, entonces, y en estos dos últimos años, recién sacó con Yana Bukler un libro muy accesible con dibujos que dice que es que trata realmente su historia personal eh, y cómo su historia personal se llama entre el río y el mar, mis viajes en Israel y Palestina, y dentro de eso, por su historia como chico que es en Jerusalén, como periodista, un poco como activista, como profesor, narrando las dos historias, las dos miradas, llegando al día de hoy. Y queríamos un poco empezar y leer, ya sé que es un poco difícil hablar en con intérprete en el medio, pero un poco que nos cuentes de vos mismo, de la historia un poco que narras en el libro y qué te trajo a escribirlo. Y si Ana entra, está muy invitada también a comentarlo.
Hi, thank you for inviting me to this meeting. I'm not used to speak to European audience, but maybe it's not that a bad idea. And I usually don't have answers to the question why I did anything because I don't have good reasons. There are reasons, but I'm not sure that they are important. So the book generally is the idea was not of mine, but it was of the illustrator, which is Yana Bukler. She will arrive, I think, to here in a couple of minutes. And she had an idea to write a kind of illustrated guide to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict or to Israel and Palestine. And she asked me as a historian and as a, I don't know, ethnograph or whatever I am, to write the text for the illustrations. So we started to do that, and it was very, 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 very boring. It was, the text was, this is Al-Aqsa Mosque. Al-Aqsa Mosque was built in this year and that year. This is Masada, this and that happened in Masada. It was not very interesting. So we discussed it, and we thought that we better if we have a persona or someone who would lead the story. So then we started to think about, historical figures, and we thought about Yitzhak Rabin, we thought about Netanyahu, we thought about generals, we thought about Yasser Arafat, we thought about certain personalities, and it was not good enough. And then she said, I know that you have your own personal story, so why not you tell your own story? And what is my story? My story is that I was born in Jerusalem before the war of 67. I was born in 61. And I was born to religious national family, not the usual one, because my mother came from Poland and my father came from Afghanistan. And they had their own unique way of understanding what is Judaism, what is to be religious, and what is to be a national Jew, but they were. And my name is Hillel Cohen, so we are from the family of Kohanim, the people who used to work in the Holy Temple in Jerusalem before the destruction of the temple. And we had, of course, the dream of the rebuilding of the temple and so on and so forth. So when I was very young, 4 or 5 years old, before the war of 67, we lived quite in Jerusalem, quite close to the border with Jordan, to Jordanian Jerusalem, and we used to watch towards the old city, and my parents would tell me, this is the place where the Temple of Solomon was, and we will return to that place one day, and you will be a Cohen. I don't know if priest is a good translation. You will be a Cohen in the third temple. So this is what I thought will happen to me. It didn't happen yet, as you probably know. But this was, I wouldn't say the dream, but it was a vision. Yeah, but it's not a personal vision. It's not a family vision. It is a vision of generation of Jews. Generation after generation, we prayed for the rebuilding of the temple on Temple Mount and to the return of the kingdom of David and so on and so forth. So this is the environment where I grew in, and then I, like what happened to most of my generation, every year I became older in a year. And then when I was, I think it was 13, 14, after the 73 war, the movement of Gush Emunim was established with the idea of resettlement or settlement all over the West Bank. And I was part of it because this is what I believed. And also because it was much more interesting to go in the hills of Judea and Samaria than to go to school, as you might assume yourself. So this is what I did. But what happened to me, which was a bit different from many friends of mine who also joined this movement with enthusiasm, what happened to me is that at the very same time, I used to go to Palestinian villages around Jerusalem. And I started to talk Arabic. I started to understand Arabic, and it became part of my habit to go in these villages and then also refugee camps and to talk with people in these places. So I was 13, 14, 15. When I was 15, I left high school, and I started to visit these villages as actually it was my main issue in life. It's not that I was addicted to it, but I mean 2-3 days a week I would go to any place. I can take a Palestinian bus to Hebron or to Ramallah or to Nablus, and then go from there to villages, or to walk by foot 3, 4, 5 days between the villages. And this was the mid-late 1970s. And people were very hospitable. I mean, this is the Arab tradition that if someone is hungry, you give him food or hair. If someone needs a place to sleep, he would be invited to sleep. And in this way, I visited many houses, dozens and hundreds of houses, dozens and hundreds of villages, and I was interested. This was also true when I used to visit Jewish neighborhoods and Jewish places to speak with older people and to listen to their stories. And what happened when I was 16 or 17, I joined a settlement which is called Bethel, which is to the north of Ramallah. And I was one of the first students of the yeshiva there. And at the very same time, I used to go to the villages around. So what happened to me is that I hear totally different stories about history, about the will of God, about whatever, about what is a War 48, about what is occupation, about what God wants from us, from both Palestinian radicals or Palestinian moderates or Palestinian who has or had no interest in politics or in the politics in the way that we used to refer to politics, and rabbis from the settlements. And so, and what I realized in very young age, that despite what is seen as contradictions, everything is true in a very basic way, in the sense that everything, I mean, all these ideas exist. So all these ideas exist. So all these ideas are part of what we should know in order to understand the reality. So my attitude, which was very maybe naive and very natural for me and very trivial, was just to listen and understand what people tell me. So this was when I was very young. So in this, I think it in a sense, it shaped the way that I understand the world until now. And then, of course, I went to the army, and after the army, I worked in construction because I didn't finish high school. So I worked a couple of years in construction. And of course, I worked with Palestinians. So I became familiar with another way of life of Palestinians, but also, and then I went to the university to study Middle East studies, and then I worked as a journalist, and then I wrote my PhD, and then I was a political activist for a while, and human rights activist in the first Intifada, and political activist in the second Intifada, and I was involved in many ways. So all this is just what I'm. It's a kind of a too long answer to the question about the book. So when we thought to write about the history of the conflict, the idea was that we can write the history of the conflict through my own eyes. And this is what we did. This is the answer.
Yes, esta respuesta casi abarcó todas las preguntas que tengo. No, pero entonces, en inglés. Entonces sí, bueno, voy entre ellas, pero también yo entiendo lo que lo marcó, pero y contestaste porque quería preguntar realmente cuál es tu experiencia personal que te dejó siempre ver estos dos puntos de vista. Pero, ¿y cómo lo enfrentaste estos 2 últimos años? ¿Lo pudiste sostener en una realidad tan polarizada?
Well, I think at the very beginning, when I was very young, when I heard for the first time Palestinian stories about the Nakba from Palestinian refugees, okay? So I'm going down from the yeshiva of the settlement, and I enter a refugee camp, and I don't even remember if I was supposed to know that this is dangerous or not, because usually, I don't know. But I entered there like it's very natural, and it was a rainy day, and people, of course, invited me to drink a cup of tea, like what I do now. And when we started to talk, they started to tell me about their villages, their destroyed villages. Now, at that time, when I was 17, I knew, or I thought that I know, all Palestinian villages between the river and the sea, all of them. I visited, I guess, 85% of them, and the rest 15, I wish to go there, so I know their name, I know their locations. So when these people started to tell me, someone say, I'm from Annabe, or I'm from Barfilia, the second one saying, and the third one say, I'm from Kufur Daniel. So I told them, no, there are no villages. There are no such villages. And they say, yeah, there are no such villages because you destroyed them. And I say, I didn't destroy any village. And they tell me, no, you say you don't destroy, but you, the Zionists, the Israelis, you destroy the villages. And I say, why would you destroy the villages? And then they told me about the War of 48. And I say, really? Because my mother told me that she was in Jerusalem during the war, and the Jews were attacked by the Arabs, and there was Jewish Jerusalem was under siege. They didn't have water. And they said, but you see that now we live in a refugee camp because you destroyed our villages and we don't have any other place to live in. So when they said it, of course, I knew that this is true. I knew that they are not lying to me. Of course, it was true. But at the very same time, I knew that also what my mother had told me was true. Of course, my mother wouldn't lie to me. So in this way, it was very easy for me to understand that you can hear different stories and both would be true. And actually, they do not contradict each other. And two truths cannot be contradictory. They're complementary. They're not contradictory. And this is what I understood then. Many years afterwards, in the university, I heard that there is something which is called postmodernism and all this kind of stuff. I never really comprehended fully.
Y caíste ahí.
But okay. But you ask about today, but also today, I'll give you, the most cruel and difficult example. When you take October 7 as an example. So when you speak about October 7, when you hear Israelis talk about October 7 for them is a continuation of history. It's piece of history. It's piece of history which continues the Holocaust and continues the pogroms and continues the expulsion of Jews from Spain, for example. So this is part of Jewish history. And in this sense, the Hamas members who entered the Israel and killed these people in the cruel way that they did it, they were part of this chain of anti-Semitism from Roman days or whenever until present. And when you talk with Palestinians, for Palestinians, this event is of course a piece of history, but the chain of the history is totally different. It's about the siege over Gaza and about the previous attacks of Israel or bombardment of Gaza by Israel and the occupation of Palestine and the Nakba of 48. So you can see that the same event, of course, for each nation, each group, whatever, it is part of totally different history. But okay, is it contradiction? Is one of them not true? Isn't it for the Jews a continuation of the Holocaust and for Palestinian continuation of the Nakba? And so what's the problem? Why not to see it?
Yo te digo por qué. Y ya borré todas las preguntas que tuve antes y las tiré. Porque una cosa es si en un mundo académico del cual venís, eso es real. Existen todas esas verdades de una forma profunda en la gente. Pero después está la realidad material. Sos un judío en Israel en una situación específica y tomás acción. Entonces, ¿cómo haces entre la teoría y la práctica o cómo sentís que esta teoría puede afectar la práctica, puede afectar los hechos reales o que queda como concepto académico? Sé que no es...
The point is not that it's not an easy question. It is not a question. And it's not, what is the question here? I mean, this is what I think. This is what I feel. It has nothing to do with academia or not academia, because I knew it when I was 16. And this is the truth. Now, if you tell me this truth is useless, okay, maybe this truth is useless. Also, to see half of the truth is useless. Nothing is of use. What the connection between usefulness and truth? Now, this is the answer, but I can add to it that, for example, this week I went to high school to talk with students of high school. And when I talk to them, this is more or less what I tell them. I tell them, we have our own truth, but you don't understand anything if you see only half of the picture, because you are in a conflict, we are in a conflict. And if there was only one view, there was no conflict. So if you want to understand the conflict, you have to understand why there is a conflict, meaning to understand what other people think and what is different between the way you understand the reality and history, and they understand the reality of history. Either both, if you want to fight them or if you want to make peace with them, you have to understand why they have different worldview. And this is what I can suggest to them. But of course, I don't say that this is a key to solution, but I think it's a better way to live.
It might be also a key for solution, but it's still yes, it's still a practice that it's hard to practice. Do you find a lot in those 2 years, a lot of partners in the Palestinian side to share this way of holding this truth, those narratives?
No, I don't find many partners, neither in the Israeli side nor in the Palestinian side. I talk with Israelis and Palestinians, and some of them agree with me more, and some of them agree with me less. Some of them agree with me intellectually, but not emotionally. Some of them agree with me emotionally, but not cognitively. Some of them do not agree with me at all. This is a way to look that is good for some people and less good for other people. I mean, I can only suggest. And I think for Palestinians, it is very, very difficult. I mean, I used to talk much more with Palestinian audiences or even with Palestinian, individuals, of course, before October 7th and today. It's part of it is because I'm much less active with Palestinians. And most of what I do is with young Israelis. But also because many Palestinians are less ready to talk with Israelis anymore. During the first Intifada, I was a journalist, and in the first Intifada, in a sense, the way I sensed it, the first Intifada was not only, but to a certain degree, a Palestinian call to the Israelis, listen to us. And this is why you can ask everyone who was a journalist at that time. It was not only me. I was not even a big shot at that time. But there were many big, names of journalists that can tell you during the first Intifada. I mean, people from Fatah, from Hamas, from the Popular Front, from the Democratic Front, from Islamic Jihad, everybody looked for Israeli journalists to talk with them to convey the Palestinian message to the Israeli public. This is not the case today. Today, after Oslo and after the Second Intifada, they say there's no reason to talk to you. You do not listen. You do not understand. You are a freak of control freak. You want only to take our land. This kind and to a significant degree they are right. So why to talk with Israelis? And some of them, for them, all Israelis are the same. So personally, people talk with each other, but not in political frameworks and not in in academic frameworks.
And when you go to schools, you feel that you said you go to schools, you talk to youth, or you have students, you feel that they listen. ¿Por qué lo dije? ¿Sentís que que te escuchan?
Look, if there are, let's say, on Sunday, there were 150 17-year-old students of high school in Jerusalem listening to me. Now, what does it mean to listen? So some of them listened, some of them were in their, Instagram or whatever, fine. But, everybody who in the field of talking with people or education or whatever, that there is something which we call seeds, and there is something that we call a certain percentage would accept a certain percentage of what I have said. So I received this WhatsApp message from a friend of mine whose daughter was in the audience, okay? And he writes to me, listen, my daughter was in your lecture. I didn't know that he has a daughter there. My daughter was in your lecture, and she told me that her right-wing friend wrote everything that you have said. And after the lecture, she said, maybe I don't accept it, but I do understand why Palestinians think that Israel is a settler colonial power. Okay? So what I'm trying to say is, and this is what I do with students, I don't try to shape their political identity, but I tell them you have to understand that Palestinians do what they do because of what they think. So you better understand what they think. So this is one step to something. What is a thing? Of course, this is under debate.
Okay. Hillel, I would like to ask from a different angle. Well, first, I think that your position is very unique. Yeah, you come from it's the world of the yeshiva of Beit El and open to listen to Palestinians. And often you can see the settlers on the West Bank now, and you see how they don't have a cognitive dissonance, yeah, ruining olive trees, or how they can explain this to themselves. And this is really, and when you say about polarization, it's really hard to grasp the other side. And for some of us, they are also the other side, no? But I would like to take it to a different angle, because in your academic work, there is the article about the 48 war. And I think it's very coherent with your way of thinking, because there is the debate is, was it a defense, a war that a percentage of the population were killed and so on, or was it an occupation kind of war, like the Palestinian describe? And I think from your point of view, you can see there were two wars, and this is completely in line with your way of thinking. Can you elaborate a little bit about that? Because this is also an issue in dispute, and it's about how you look at it, no?
Yes, but I'll say a few words about the war of 1948. Okay, I mean, you know that from Palestinian perspective, the war of 48 is the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, the destruction of Palestinian villages, and so on and so forth. From the point of view of Jews or Zionist Jews, to be more accurate, the war was a self-defense from our side. We did our best to prevent the war, and we were attacked by the Arabs, so we had to launch a counterattack. And this counterattack, you know, they lost the war and they lost their homes and so on. So you can see that there is totally different approaches, understandings of the war. And again, when we talk about it, I remember what I was told by the Palestinians in this refugee camp about what happened to them. And I said, yeah, this is true. And what my mother told me, and I said, this is true. But also here, when we look at these two national narratives, both are true. And we have to understand that before I just give you an example, I teach a course about the War 48 at Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Of course, most of my students are Israeli Jews. Minority of my students are Palestinian Arabs. And in this course, and the last time that I did this course, that I taught this course, there were 3 Palestinians out of 16 or 15 students. So what I do usually, if there aren't Palestinians in the group, I divide them into small research group, and I give them test cases to study about the War 48. So, for example, the occupation of Haifa, the occupation and massacre, not massacre, in Deir Yassin, what happened in Jerusalem, what happened in Gush Etzion, and so on. And they have to choose to find articles or sources about what happened there, to have the different narratives. And when you have different narrative, to look into these narratives and to tell and to write whether there is factual contradiction between the narratives. So what we usually find out is that there is no there is no factual contradiction between the narratives. They attack at this date. Yeah, they attacked at this day. They did this, they did that. It's the same story. Now, what we do have is that some facts are omitted from this version, and some facts are omitted from this version. So this is one kind of a change that creates difference between the narrative. And the other point is, what is a bigger story into which you put the story about, let's say, the Battle of Haifa? Okay? So what I'm trying to say is that it is usually the debate about facts is very minimal. And in this sense, there's no problem to have the whole story and to bring the facts from both sides. And then you say, yeah, on the one hand, it was, from a Jewish point of view, it was self-defense, but you take advantage and then you ethnic cleansed the area. So it's not either or, it was both. And this is true for certain areas. And this is also true when you look at the war as a whole. When you look at the war 48 as a whole, yeah, the Jewish Yishuv was attacked. And this is how the war started. Then when they had more power, in their counterattack, what they did is to expel also villages that didn't attack them, to launch operations against civil population, and so on and so forth. So it's not or either. This is, when you look at all of it, only then you can see the truth, what happened in the war. So if you stick to national narrative, either Israeli or Palestinians, you do not understand what happened. Now, the other point is, what is the big framework into which you put it? And then this is a serious difference, because if you take, for example, the work of Walid Khalidi, who is in Arabic they call him Sheikh al-Mu'arikhin. He's the Sheikh, or how you say, the person who established the field of Palestinian history, and he's established also the Journal of Palestinian History, and so on. So when he writes about the War 48, he says the War of 48, or the Nakba, started in Basel in the first Zionist Congress in 1897. It didn't start in 29 November 47. No, it started in Basel in 1897, because at this Congress, the Zionists decided to take control over Palestine. So if this is the framework, the discussion, what really happened in, February 13 in Jaffa Gate in Jerusalem is not important. Who attacked whom? No, because this is the big story. And the Jewish Zionist big story, we returned to our homeland in order to live in peace. And we were ready to live in peace with the inhabitants of the country. And this is a debate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did we?
Did you?
Did we live in peace?
Did you? It's a personal question.
No,
I tell you what I mean.
no, let me clarify what I'm asking. First of all, I would like to know, what's your framework to which you're examining or setting up the conflict, and what were the intentions of the first Zionists, according to you?
Or according to them.
No, to you. I know Walid, so according to you.
It's not according to me. I'm not a first Zionist. I have only to read what they wrote. I cannot say what I think about them. What I can say is the following. When you read what early Zionists wrote, of course you can find all the spectrum in regard to the fate of the Palestinian Arabs. So the mainstream Zionism, I would say, recognized the rights, the individual, economic, religious rights of Palestinian Arabs, but not the national rights. The this is also true for the right wing, like Jabotinsky and this school. There were groups among the Zionists who, from the very beginning, they had the idea of transferring or evacuating the Arabs out of Palestine. There were tiny minority who believed in, or minority, I don't know if it was tiny, most of the time it was tiny, who believed in equal rights to Jews and Arabs in the land of Israel, Palestine. So you had all of these options, and all of these options were open, and all of similar options were in the political spectrum of Palestinian Arabs in different years. So my argument, if your name is Ben, this is what is written. My argument or my understanding is the following. My understanding is that the potential of peacemaking, the potential of mass murderer, the potential of genocide, the potential of living in peace exists in every society. And what happens on the ground is the result not only of ideology, because you have all ideologies, but the result of the dynamics between both sides. So you can say that without October 7, Israel wouldn't have done in Gaza what it has done, to kill hundreds of thousands of people. They wouldn't. Even if there are in Israel people with genocidal ideas, they wouldn't have done it without October 7. And you can say that without the occupation, the Palestinians wouldn't have done October 7. So, and the same is true for the Nakba. Had the Palestinians accepted the partition plan, of course, Israel wouldn't have destroyed 400 or 500 Palestinian villages and neighborhoods. It doesn't mean that this is because of the Palestinians. But what I'm saying is that if in the Zionist movement there was a camp that supported coexistence with the Palestinians, the attacks on the Jewish issue made this camp smaller and smaller. And the same is true for the Palestinians. If there was a pro-peace camp, and there was a pro-peace camp among the Palestinians, the Israeli attacks on Palestinians and the Israeli settlements and so on and so forth weakened this camp. So it's not that we can say this is Zionism and this is Hamas or this is Islamic Palestinianism or whatever. No, because it is so dynamic. It is so dynamic. I had discussions with many Hamas members in the 90s and in the early 2000s. It has nothing to do with Hamas of today. So what? Islam had changed? No. And the same is true for the Israeli center. People from the Israeli center who were ready to state solution, and today they're not ready to it. So basically, this is my answer. Okay, you have all potentials in both camps, and what is called, in the past, I really didn't like this, the radicals or the extremists of both sides. But what we see since also that this is true, that the extremists from both sides, they are the ones who lead both nations.
My name is Ben. We corresponded in the past. Let's play a little what if. Let's say you're a Palestinian living in what was part of the Ottoman Empire at the time, early 20th century. You are in your late teens, and then Jews.
Just one thing, una cosita.
Sorry?
No, solo quiero decir que, bueno, abrimos, naturalmente pasamos al tema de preguntas. Entonces, una pregunta más ven y después lo abrimos que cada uno pueda preguntarle a Hillel porque, bueno.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Do you hear me, Hillel?
Yeah, and I am already in the mind of a Jew in Ottoman Palestine,
No. As a Palestinian,
as
as a Palestinian,
a Palestinian Arab.
Palestinian Arab living in what is today Israel, Palestine, having all these Jews appearing slowly, but it's a constant trickle of Jews with the idea that they want to take over, basically. Would you accept it? Would you see it as a legitimate? It's impossible to answer.
Imagine that you are a Jew in a pogrom in Kishinev, and the USA decided that Jews cannot anymore come to the United States, and the only place that you can go is Palestine. Would you come to Palestine? This is exactly, your question is exactly the question that people ask when they don't want to understand. Sorry for saying it in public. And I tell you what I mean.
Understand.
No. Let me now answer. Of course, nobody say that the Palestinians didn't have the right to oppose Jewish immigration. The problem is that Jews didn't have the option but to come to Palestine. And this is the source of the conflict. This is why the decision of the US Congress to block the Jewish immigration from Eastern Europe to the USA, this is a great achievement of the Zionist movement, even if the Zionist movement didn't initiate it. Anyhow, we are talking about two people that did what they did for good reasons. Jews came to Palestine for good reasons. Palestinians opposed it for good reasons. So what? Let's continue kill each other because there are rights that they oppose Zionism?
Not at all.
Let's not create a dialogue here. We thank you for the questions. We value the answer. Are there some other questions?
May I chip in? I'm watching this from Amsterdam. I grew up in Amsterdam Zuid among the children of the survivors. I'm not Jewish. We hated the Germans. We are now so many decades on, and we talk to Germans. There's reconciliation. We overcame it. That's one thing. I volunteered as an Arabist with the Dutch army, and I served 2 tours of duty, chasing attacks on Israel and disarming suicide squads. These were not driven by Islam, as you probably know, in 1980 to 83. Of course, it stopped in 1982. I did a second tour during the Israeli occupation. Then I would like to bring in an observation. In Hohenems, I think that's in Austria, there is now an exhibition going on entitled Morgenländer. I don't know if you are aware of this. That's the German for the Orientalists.
Can you put it please in the chat? Sorry, if you have.
Yes, I'll put the exhibition in the chat.
Great.
And what struck me there is, of course, I'm actually by training originally a Slavicist, so Old Bulgarian, that sort of stuff. And then I went to Turkic studies, and I had to do Arabic in order to get into Turkic studies. But then I was fascinated by the 19th century German learning. And that, of course, was driven by Jews. Mm-hmm. Now what I see here is the Morgenländer, that's really interesting to look into, that part of the motivation of the investigations into Islam and the Middle East was to find common ground between Islam and Judaism, as opposed to the rather locked-in position of the Jews in Europe. And actually, in extension to that, this must have projected on Zionism, where people had the ideal that they would land there and coexist. And that brings me to another observation, that when the Armenians were driven out of the Ottoman Empire at the beginning of the 20th century, they landed in Beirut, in Aleppo, and of course also in Palestine, and they sort of blended into with the population. And there was not the kind of polemics that we are now dealing with. And summing this all up, my question really is, do you agree that in spite of all the hatred that's been generated by the October 7 attacks, that time heals, like my example of Amsterdam Zuid?
Yes. I hope that time heals. I think time can heal, but you also need a political solution.
Of course.
When we have political solution, I think the time and the solution would heal.
Well,
But
I
there
have
is
no question here, but an opinion. I think the political solution can only be a state that is not an ethno state.
The problem is that most Jews are not supporting this idea.
I understand, yes.
And one might say that for good reasons. But now there is a point which is for me is very interesting, is that even now that we are in the middle of a war, and after all what was done in Gaza and beforehand in the Western Negev, when you walk in Jerusalem, when you enter a hospital in Jerusalem, when you go in the streets of Jerusalem, so Jews and Arabs, Israelis and Palestinians, they walk in the same streets. I mean, it is something which is in a way is very strange, because if you see a Palestinian in Gaza, you can shoot and kill him as an Israeli soldier. But if you go in Jaffa Street in Jerusalem or in other street, in Gaza Street in Jerusalem, you do not do it. So at the very same time that there is a kind of a total war between us, we are also blended in the street and in the markets and so on and so forth. So this war in this sense is not a total war.
I understand, and that also is where the healing
Yeah.
a bit can come in. And I also want to remind you of the fact that now the the Palestinian struggle is framed as religious and Islamic. But the one that I faced, going back to the 1980s, was definitely secular and out of necessity, because the Palestinians themselves are fragmented between religious factions and different religions and political opinions. And the only way to get their act together was de-religiousizing it. And I think this is just one way of reiterating my original view, that in the end, even if the Jews today are unwilling to consider this, it looks like the only way forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think we will pass on to more questions.
Of course, yes.
I saw Aya Eliav, please.
Yes. In continuation, maybe to what you were talking now, I'm just curious to know if, because the solution must be political, if you were a politician, which kind of solution or vision would you try to raise, to
Implement.
apply, suggest?
Yes. So first of all, I think this is why I'm not a politician, because I don't have a good answer. But I think, again, and I'm sorry again for it, that I'm not sure that this is the right question, because my opinion is, maybe I'm wrong, and some people almost convinced me that I'm wrong, but my argument until 2 weeks ago, let's say, was that the question is not what is the solution. The point is that both sides are not interested in solution. I mean, Israelis still think that they can defeat the Palestinians. Some Palestinians think that they can defeat the Israelis, and if not in this generation, in the next generation. So if you don't want solution, who cares what the solution that we suggest? So the project, if this is a political project, is to make people accept the idea that better to find a solution than to keep fighting. And then the question whether 20 settlements would remain or only 12, the number of refugees that would return will be 50,000 or 75,000, the border would be inside Jerusalem or outside of Jerusalem, all these questions would be negligible. if both sides want to find solution. So this was my argument, and someone told me, look, if you would suggest a perfect solution, then people would want a solution. I don't think this is the case, but this is a point. Now, I think that any solution should be based on the idea of equality. So it can be equality in one state, it can be equality between states, but the idea is that you do not control and you are not controlled, either as a Palestinian or as an Israeli. What is the problem? The problem is that if Israel is a colonial state, so a solution that Israel remains is not a solution, because it gives legitimization, it legitimizes a colonial state. So some Palestinians would say, no, we cannot accept it. Many Palestinians would say, no, this is good in theory, but there is life. But these are the kind of debates that we face all the time, in both sides, of course, in different ways.
So you're quite pessimist, we can say.
No.
No.
I don't feel pessimist.
That's
No,
the most
maybe.
important thing.
You know what I mean? I do not walk in the street and I say, yeah, why? Horrible, what, there's no future. No, I have some friends who walk like that and say, what the fuck? I mean, this is not a story. I mean, we create a story. We create the kind. Of course, we cannot create everything, and we cannot change, political decisions of government, and we cannot move armies from place to place. But in our understanding, in our suggestion, we can create small and bigger environments of understanding or whatever.
Because actually, when you say that we don't want a solution, neither Israelis and Palestinians, which is quite true. So it means that we have to invest many years in changing educations, and it will take a lot of time to change ideas or implement the 2 points of view, so people would like to have a solution. This is why I said that I imagine you're pessimist.
I mean, the verse, Yeshuat Hashem Ke'eref Ayin.
Yeah.
You don't know if it would happen slowly or fast, or it never happens. I mean, Velo ata ben chorin yipater mimena. I mean, this is what it is. We can do what we can do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I would like to add, I would like to ask actually to bring us back to the book. And we have Yana with us, the illustrator and the artist. And I would love to hear from both and from her also a bit about the process. You described the beginning, how it was meant to be something a bit different, and that she initiated the whole idea and the different path it took. With you being the protagonist, I would like to know a bit more about the work process between you and how she experienced the whole project. Yana.
Hi. I came here to listen to Hillel, not to speak. I didn't prepare myself for this, but for me, it was what I can do to help Israel in little thing to promote peace, maybe, and to show both sides, both histories, because the narrative in Israel and Palestine, and in Europe, it's very different. It's like black and white. What they say, what we say, and that's it. But when you listen to Hillel, it's a different story. It's a little bit different point of view, and for me it was very interesting. And I asked him, because it's interesting, but it's only in academy. It's only for very intellectual people to read his books. So how can we propose what he talked about to more people. So we did this book because of this idea. And
thank you so much. I think it's a very inspiring and a very good method, I think, to reach more public and to communicate this idea.
Important.
Very important.
thank you.
Anyone else? I see there's a question in the chat. I would like to ask about accountability, having a story, the right story or truth doesn't mean that the power relation today and the situation today is free of moral and accountability. From Moshe.
I'm not sure I understand it. No.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I have to speak, no?
Yeah,
Tengo
you
que
don't
hablar.
have any choice.
Bueno,
Okay.
Hillel, I showed myself, okay.
Thank you. We have the
Hello.
You surrender.
Yeah, my question is, it's nice to show that there's like two ways to look at the truth, and there are two narratives, but there come a time when there's like a specific actions that need there need to be some kind of accountability, and in accountability there is the power relation. So basically I'm saying like Israel can have, or Israelis can have this truth about didn't have a choice about different things from 48 till I don't know when, and in some points of times they didn't have a choice, and in some points of time they did have a choice. But still on, we are like 2 years and still going, I believe, as a genocide. If not, it's like a criminal war. So there is a point of accountability. And the second thing that I want to ask is about apartheid. I mean, because this also like apartheid and occupation and Seger and Gaza, all of these have consequences, and it's not something like on a history level of 2000 years. It's like now, what I'm doing now. So this, what do you think about the word accountability in this conflict, in the situation right now?
I'll try to be as honest as I can.
Okay.
It's not easy, but I'll try.
Okay.
I think that, of course, I don't know what we really want when we say accountability. I mean, do we want to punish? Do we want to put an end to violence and to bloodshed? What do we want? So there's no we. So everybody should ask himself or herself. Do we want to be right and to feel that we have the best ideas? What do we want? So what I can say about myself is that from out of all options, I chose one path. It doesn't mean that other paths are less good. It means that for me, this thing of trying to make people view the other, this is what is right for me to do, because this is a person that I am. I'm not a politician, as Aya suggested, and I'm not a prosecutor, as you suggest. I'm a private person who has one, more or less, idea and one ability, which is to listen to people and to tell the stories of people. And this is what I do. Now, it doesn't mean that I do not go to try to block settlers when they go to wherever they go in Palestinian villages. I did it, and I hope to do it again. So there are many fields, but for me, the main project is this. Now, what is my idea about, I don't know, bringing Israeli generals to The Hague? I don't know. I didn't think enough about it. I don't think that everybody should have answers to all questions, for example. I think that everybody has, nobody has to do something, but in the sense that if I want to be involved, this is a path that is the right for me. I don't know if I'm clear enough, but I really try to be, as I told you, as honest as possible. I even don't, the debate whether it is genocide or it is not genocide, what Israel committed in Gaza. I don't want to enter it. For me, it's not important. I know that for other people it's important. I respect them. Some of my best friends, as we say, Israelis and Palestinians. Many questions that are very important, I cannot deal with them. And I feel okay with it, that I cannot deal with them. And I feel that if there is a thing that I can do good, this is what I'll try to do. And now, Moshe, tell me, please, if this is a relevant answer to a question or not.
Yeah, I think I think it is. I think that the situation is very complicated, and I think you and some of us that are Israelis we have like families, we have friends, we have people that are in the army, and we need to make a decision. For me, it's a decision, a daily decision to what kind of communication, what kind of love I have to these people that are in the army right now. And the concept of accountability and the concept of like I'm right, that I feel that I'm right and they feel that they're right, and some other people feel that they have nothing to do with it. For me, the thing is that Israel is not like other colonialists in the world. If it's colonial or not, doesn't matter. In the sense of like the population of Israel is the majority is part of it, like actively part of it. If they are in Miluim, if they are in the army, if they are supporting this, the soldiers like actively. So I don't know. That's when I'm talking about accountability, I'm not talking about specifically about a general here or general there.
No, but again, the question is whether we speak about to end it or accountability.
Well, I think to end it, I agree totally with you. I think there's no wish from both sides, from either side to end it. So, like now, accountability seems to me like a good path. Not in the prosecutor sense, because I'm not no judge, no lawyer, but on a moral level, on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Thank you, Moshe.
I think I saw Paula Adam raising her hand before. Paula?
Yeah. Hello. Thanks a lot, Hillel, for sharing your experience. This has been really very interesting. I'm not Jewish, from Barcelona, but I have lots of loving friends in Israel and all over the place, also Palestinians. So I'm very worried about the situation. I'm very worried about the fact that, especially since after October 7th, the two narratives have been my feeling is that there used to be more narratives than just two, and because there was more human contact between ones and the others. Although situations like, for example, I know in Israel there were people running choirs where Palestinians and Israeli were singing together, or there were some activists doing things to have a human touch one and another, and this has been broken since 7th of October. So recuperation of human perspective is very important in order to recuperate more than two narratives, because at the end of the day, there is no two narratives. There are lots of narratives, and this is what I liked about your presentation. You are talking about many narratives. Many. Your own story is a narrative as valuable as the official one. So I don't think any political solution will be successful unless there is this recuperation of more than two narratives and more than two visions and recuperation of human contact. Now, and then so my question goes to your personal story. You said that your mother comes from Poland and your father comes from Afghanistan. Is that was that right? And is your father okay? Last summer I read this book by Abi Slaim, who comes from Iraq, and one of his points was that actually those Israelis that have origins in Arab countries have different experiences or family experiences than those coming from European countries, etc. This is two narratives also, no? And these two narratives, you have lived them in your family, and I was wondering whether this was perhaps the reason why you were in contact with Palestinians, because your father was Arab, I don't know. But would it be possible to, or is it just too much of science fiction to think that there are other, that, for example, in your students' groups, you have the Jews and Palestinians. Palestinians are 3 and Jews are 17. That's too unequal. So maybe, changing groups in a way that to empower the narrative of the Arabs that have Jews from Israel that come from Arabic countries and can explain good stories about living together. I don't know, maybe it's too naive what I'm asking, but it strikes me that your experience and also your parents' generation may have lots of things to share in order to rebuild this human contact.
Thank you for this. Actually, I did a huge research, and my previous book was about it is called Lovers Hate Story. Mizrahi is Jews who came from Muslim states. Mizrahi, Palestinians, and Ashkenazis.
Okay.
So it just was shortlisted for the Jewish Book Award for 2025. So the point is, there are a couple of points here, but the first is that, the current generation, I mean, my students, which are 20-something year old, they are the grandkids of people who lived in Muslim world. They don't have any experience of living in Muslim world, in the Muslim world. The second is that you assume that the experience of Jews under Islam was good, but this is not always the case. Sometimes it was so, sometimes it was not so. And what happened in recent years, that if we speak about narratives, so the narratives about the suffering of Jews under Islam became the dominant narrative. So if in the 1910s, at the beginning of Zionism, most, not all, because there were also many experiences, but many, let's say many, even not most, many Oriental Jews, as they were called at that time, many Oriental Jews said, why to fight the Arabs? We can make peace with the Arabs. We live with them. We are used to them. We are good friends. We are good neighbors. So this was the case 100 years ago. Today, it's totally the opposite. So they would say, no, it was horrible to live with them. You cannot trust them, and so on and so forth. So it's a good idea, but it's naive, and I mean, just to make the picture more accurate, all the time, throughout more than 100 years of Zionism, there are groups of Jews of Arab land who initiate ties with Palestinians and create a common ground for political solution. Even today, just last Friday, there was a conference of such a group. So it's part of the political discourse, but they are regarded tiny minority among Israelis. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think we'll head to the last question by Joyce. I think you raised your hand.
Yes, thank you. Hi, Hillel.
Hi. How are you?
It's very nice to see you here in my living room in North Carolina. So I'm quite familiar with your work, and I love it. And I absolutely agree with your approach. But recently I've been thinking about some of the things that get left out. And the really, really big thing that I think became so clear, you know, with Trump and Jared Kushner and this war in Gaza, where it just felt like the curtain was being pulled back, and it became very clear that this was all about people making a lot of money off of real estate investments, and they have already the real estate investments in the West Bank, and now they're going to build Gaza and whatever. And so I think about real estate, I think about oil, I think about the gas fields, Leviathan and Tamar under the Mediterranean Sea, and how on the one hand, you know, you have cooperation like with Egypt and maybe Jordan and maybe even Lebanon a little bit about gas and so forth, but the ideologies are fighting with each other, the narratives are fighting with each other. And while we're all busy fighting with each other, there's a very small group of people in the world who are getting very, very wealthy. And so I wonder if you've been thinking about how we can talk to people in ways that allow us to understand how we're all sort of suffering as a result of this small group of people who's making all our lives miserable and destroying the planet at the same time, right? So it's a big question, but I'm guessing this isn't the first time you thought about it.
Yes, thank you, Joyce. I think about it in recent years, and I don't know what to think. In what sense? Because if this is true, I mean that we are. I don't know if this is the right word. Tell me if I'm wrong. If we are duped by this kind of people, and it's not really that we have different narrative. It's not really that we have different religions. It's not really that we have different ideologies, but we fight because of them. No, even if it was true, we cannot accept it. But it is also not true. Okay?
No, of course the narratives are real and the religions are real and all of it is real.
Yeah.
All of it is real. But I do think that we often pay a lot of attention to that stuff, like who is accountable and who should go to The Hague and whether or not this is a genocide and what is anti-Semitism. And we fail to realize the destruction that's going to ultimately affect our children and grandchildren if Bezrat Hashem yהיו לנו grandchildren בכלל.
Yeah. So we have to think about ways to deal with it, because there are no ways at the moment. Because in a sense, they control also the discourse about narratives and about religion. And this is what is horrible, because I know that some people are not that religious, but they are told to be religious in order to fight. You know, we know them because they are our friends. Yeah. I mean, today you are such religious that you want to occupy Gaza in order to settle there because this is what God wants. Where did you hear that? I know you for 40 years. So there is something here that is very tricky. But I don't know how one can deal with it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't either. I just thought maybe, maybe you would be a prophet.
No, that maybe we start talk about it. This is more accurate. Yeah.
Give him time, he will become one.
No. Thank you, Ben. No.
Yo quería decir que sé que este formato es difícil, digamos, porque queremos hablar, queremos debatir, queremos cambiar idiomas y no es fácil porque realmente nos toca a todos muy profundamente, cada uno de su punto, de su lado, y siento que solo tocamos un poco porque estamos como... Yo antes pensaba, bueno, es muy importante traer el tema de las narrativas, pero siento que es tan profundo todo lo que hay que hablar dentro de esto y también con más gente y con todos los puntos de vista y que bueno, recién estamos empezando algo y lo vamos a aprender a ampliar y hablarlo y poder profundizarlo. Pero quiero agradecer mucho a Hillel que nos dio su tiempo y que nos escuchó y que nos contó y que nos habló y a Yana también por hacer el libro. Y quiero agradecer a todos los que vinieron. Margot, si querés decir algo, te veo ahí. Y
Sí,
quiero agradecer a todos los que
sí,
vinieron. Sí, sí.
no sobre el libro, porque habéis hablado del libro, pero no sabemos dónde comprarlo, en qué idioma está, dónde está publicado, como una información sobre el objeto de lo que hablamos para
El
leerla.
libro en este momento está en hebreo, en inglés, pero y si alguien, y queremos que se traduzca al castellano, así que cualquier idea de cómo lo hacemos, mejor.
¿Está publicado en
Em,
Estados Unidos? ¿Dónde está publicado? Para comprarlo, digo.
em,
The book was not published yet in English. It was published in German. If someone happened to
German.
know German, so it can be found in Germany. It was translated into English, but we do not have a publisher so far. We're looking for a publisher in the US, and yeah, now we have a publisher in Arabic. It will be translated probably into Arabic soon. And
Thank
we'll
you.
see.
We see in the chat the links.
I just gave the link.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sí, quiero decir que el tema de encontrar una editorial es para mí decir que quizás a veces en este encuentro nos parece que el tema de puntos de vista es como obvio, pero se ve que no es tan obvio en el mundo que, y no es tan fácil de tragar para ninguna de las opiniones o para ninguna de todos los costados que hay. Entonces, bueno, quise agradecer mucho a Hillel y a todos los que vinieron y sigamos reuniéndonos.
Gracias a Daniel Sher.
Muchas gracias a
Sí,
Daniel,
gracias.
sí.
Sí.
Sí, que si no, sin vos sería imposible.
Daniela, ¿quieres agregar algo, Daniela? Porque estamos cerrando ya.
Vale.
Bueno, sería
Yes, I wanted to. I am very grateful to listen to Hillel because I think you have done a very important operation in all this logic or illogic situation. The operation is that both sides have the right to the existence. That's very, very simply I say it. So you are a good Cohen. Thank you very much, Hillel.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And hope to see you all in our next encounters.
Stay tuned.